Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conrad, and this show is where we hear the real stories from real people changing the world. From everyday people to the top celebrities, all the conversations are real, raw, and always unscripted. Thank you for joining me today. Now let's get to today's guest. All right, everybody, welcome to Unscripted One-on-One from my still unnamed studios here in Columbus, Ohio. And man, I'm excited today. As always, I feel like every guest I say that, and I probably do. But today I have my good friend, mentor, coach, leader extraordinaire, Coach Mike Deegan. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you and your family, and we will go from there.
Yeah, you nailed it. I'm Mike Deegan. I by day I'm a baseball coach and assistant professor at Denison University. So I teach a leadership course there in coaching. Have 4 kids from turning 11 here in a couple of days, 9, 6, and 4. Great wife in Lowry, and do a lot of stuff on the side around business and culture and leadership development. So a jack of all trades, master of none.
That's right. That's right. I would argue a master of several of those, but and that's our connecting point, right? I mean, I think we met on 2 fronts. One, and I can't believe I was sitting here thinking about it just a few minutes ago. I think our original, this had been 3 years since the whole recruiting, and my son was starting to get into baseball and starting to dabble in, maybe playing at the next level. And I remember I peppered you with about a million questions. What do you look for in a player? What do you look for in a pitcher? What do you look for? And you were very gracious in that time. And even at some point, even had Austin on campus. And we will always be thankful for that. And, we probably can't go too much into how close it was for him to be a part of Big Red.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He was. Yeah, it's been. I think you're right. I mean, it goes back to the start. It started there, and and we've done a little work on the side too. Done some leadership development stuff together as well. So yeah, I think it's amazing how time flies. But I would almost guess it's probably been 4 or 5 years when you go back to the first time we actually met each other.
Yeah, and it's been a great journey as far as just watching either in person, working together, as you said, on some leadership stuff. And really, that's more so me learning from you. It's not me really doing much of anything, just learning from you, and really just having so much respect for your knowledge and being a student of leadership and now a teacher of leadership. But then also just, working side by side and seeing your character. And then it also, following online because you have a newsletter and things that you put out. So I've really followed along, for the time that we're not together because you are, we don't work together or anything like that on a daily basis, but have followed along and just seen a lot of what you do and just have so much respect for that.
Thank you. And I appreciate it. I think that one of the best things I've said about writing the newsletter and hitting send, which, is as you know, and I know you do some work with that as well. It's not easy for me. It's probably not easy for you to put out a podcast every week. It's not. But the greatest thing has been the people that it's attracted in my life. Like I've found just a lot of just great people that have we're not similar. We're not exactly the same, but we have a similar thought process and similar patterns. And so that's been great. And then the ability to keep up with people. So look, we're all going 1,000 different directions. But having something that goes out on a weekly basis, people see it and they somehow still feel connected. And then when we do meet back up, it's almost like, we're just pick right back up where we left off because they have been following. So that's what I really value about that newsletter is just, one, it may help some people along the way. And then 2, I think just the great connections and the ability for me to then learn from all these great people like yourself that have come into my life.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. And so let's take this in sections because I think we have a few things to unpack. So let's start with coaching because let's really talk about that. You have turned around a program, and as we were this is my dad hat now. Son that's playing college baseball. As we were looking at programs, obviously we wanted to be a part of a program, not just have him play baseball. And Denison was incredibly attractive to us as a university, gorgeous, just incredible university, top notch, but also as a baseball program. You came on board and really I think, turned things around there. How has it been coaching? You want to talk anything about, just coaching? What is it like coaching at Denison? And you've really had a ton of success. So what's that been like for you?
Well, Denison's a special place. I think, as you felt, I would say it's not for everybody. Just like it could be in any sector or any school, but it is a phenomenal place with phenomenal graduates and just awesome people. And I was an assistant coach for a long time. I was assistant coach for 9 years at Marietta College, and Marietta, I left in 2012, and we had just won back-to-back national championships. So we had really reached the pinnacle of Division III baseball at that point. And because of that, not necessarily because of me, but there was a lot of opportunities for things during that time, but none of them felt right. They just didn't quite feel right where Denison did. And I think a lot of it does with my personality. Like I would have a really tough time being a salesman. Like right. I don't do that well. I think what I can do well is tell our story and just allow it to attract people who want a similar experience. So with Denison, you're getting a world-class education, truly are. And then we always had the vision, and now it's coming closer to a reality of being a national caliber baseball program as well. So, you get a great education that's going to be life-changing, all the while you're playing competitive athletics. And I do think athletics and especially athletics, when you're trying to pursue greatness and pursue excellence, I think that is a unbelievable adjunct to the educational experience. So those two things combined, maybe say, okay, this Denison thing is going to be phenomenal. So I think that's where we are now. It was kind of fun. There have been great teams in the past at Denison, like years ago. Then there was a little bit of a lull, and we were able just to come back in and put a little, fix the culture a touch and embrace some of the nuances of Denison and get the program to a point where we're all very proud of it right now.
And you should be. It's a great program, and one that was really high on our list, to the point where we bought T-shirts in the bookstore. We'll just keep moving on. But honestly, we were that close. We were that close, and for all the reasons that you said, incredible university, incredible baseball, high level baseball, and a chance to really be challenged in the classroom and on the field, and just get better as a person. So it checked every box for us, no doubt about it. And I know your leadership there you've definitely cast a shadow. And then my daughter swims there for, because they hold it. Well, back in the pre-COVID days, there was a lot of swim meets there. Gorgeous facilities.
Probably one of the top 15 in the country and any level. That pool, that swimming facility is just second to none, as you know.
Yeah, all the facilities, just gorgeous. Great program. So let's transition quickly. So you moved, and you've got a book that you put out, right? Do you want to talk about the book for a minute, and then we'll really get into what you're doing now?
Yeah. So I sometimes I wonder why I do this stuff. There's being a baseball coach, as you know, is pretty time consuming as well. But I love to write. I love. Writing has really challenged me in general. It forces me to reflect, and it forces me to be aware and live with intention. Mm-hmm. So I've just always kind of jotted things down in the newsletter, and the natural progression almost was like, hey, let's try to put a book together. So right around this time last year, I released my first book called Let It Rip: My Life Lessons I've Learned Through Sports. So that went out last year, and the same thing. I think it's just a continuation of my growth and my development. And I always say it, if you read my writing, I had someone one time say, that they think I know it all, or that I think I know it all. It's just the opposite of that. It's right. I write because I'm really trying to ponder a lot of things. And I think naturally some people have gravitated toward it, but that's where I started just trying to write. And, and you and I have talked about this, AC. I love the fact that I leave a legacy for my kids. When I'm gone, there's something in writing of my thoughts. And yep. So I just think it's a beautiful thing. I recommend, I think I do it ad nauseum, even with our players. And actually was just meeting with a former player today saying, start writing, like just mm-hmm. write, like put some stuff down. You don't have to publish it, but I just think that's just one way to start creating that awareness that's so important in almost everything you do. Yeah. So that has been my natural progression. I never dreamed that I would write a book. I was maybe a slightly above average student at best. Writing doesn't come naturally to me, but it's just something that has been so, of all the things I've done, I think that's one of the most powerful things I've done is having the courage. And I say it is courage to write and share my thoughts because of all the things that we've talked about earlier, just all the benefits that have come my way.
And I would agree with you. I think there's a few things that I've picked up, and especially in your newsletter. I think as a parent, and I think that's where we talked about before, is you learn so much from your kids. It's amazing watching how your kid reacts in a little league game, and I know you've written some of those things, or parents watching a little league game and coaching. You've taken your life experiences, and I think that's what people appreciate when they read a book. Is it's not some. I would disagree with whoever told you that, because I've never received that from you or anything you've written. What I've received is you're just a guy that processes on paper or in a book or in a newsletter, like most of us think anyway, and just don't write down. I appreciate that I'm not the only guy that thought that, watching my kid or watching another parent or all the things you've used to write about.
It's the vulnerability, and I'll say, like, sports have been a humongous part of my life, probably too big of a part of my life. Like, so yeah. I joke, and even in the book I say, in my house, it was baseball. It was not baseball. It was sports first and school second, meaning it was kind of a reverse order that most people talk about. And I laugh when I say that, because it wasn't just the points or, the hits in baseball. It was all the lessons that come along with it.
Yeah.
How to prepare, how to compete, how to be a great teammate, all those transferable skills that really apply in any sector. I just have always looked at it through a sports lens. So that's kind of how I've kind of moved into this culture space and leadership space, because it's like, no, we all have a frame of reference with sport, and it really transcends just athletics, right? It goes into every avenue of life. So that's one part of it. And the second part is just, like you said, the observation as a parent, and just all the grappling and wrestling that I do, watching and trying not to be overbearing, but also trying to encourage and inspire, and that space where we find ourselves as parents, where we're being pulled in 1,000 different directions. That's kind of been my inspiration. But I've always said I'm kind of bad to watch a game with, because while everyone else is just rooting, like as a fan, I'm watching the sideline. I'm curious why they're standing there. I'm watching the press conference and taking notes. That's kind of how my mind goes in sports now. Like, as a kid, it started as being a fan, but now I'm a fan of leadership and lessons that sports provide. So it's an obsession. It's an absolute obsession that I can't turn off.
And if you get a chance, because I just saw it last night, and I know I'm going to sound like a UNC honk, because I'm a UNC honk. That's right. Yeah, it's pretty clear. But anyway,
just lean into it. Yeah.
On the ACC network last night, they had I think they have some series called Traditions, and they featured a half-hour session last night with UNC. If you get a chance, watch it, because it was really about Dean Smith and then Roy Williams, but there was so much that was so rich, and I watched it, and I looked over at Austin afterwards. He was actually watching it, and I said, this is why I'm a fan. Like that, right. Forget wins and losses; those are great, and I love the banners. What I love is, and what caught my eye was Dean Smith and his leadership. Even when I was in high school and had zero direction in my life, Dean Smith caught my eye. And I think a good coach, someone like yourself that has just that moral compass and that vision and that drive, really, you can capture pretty much anyone if they have that bent, no doubt about it.
Yeah. And I love, the Dean Smith, talk about a progressive guy. He was so far ahead of the curve with a lot of the racial injustices and things like that, just really willing to put himself out there at a time when others weren't. So I can relate. I read one of the Dean Smith books, one of the first books that really resonated with me, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but I don't know if it was the Carolina Way. I can't remember, but anyways.
Probably the Carolina Way.
Yeah, it was just phenomenal. And I think he called himself a benevolent dictator. And I love that.
That's right.
I love that phrase. It was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, I'm going to be really hard, really demanding, but I care, and a lot of people can't walk that line. And a lot of athletes have a tough time with that, with someone who's really demanding, but also putting their arm around them. And I think that's that as a leader, like, what a balance that's being able to strike that. And I think Dean Smith really captured that in so many ways.
And we could probably go down a whole rabbit trail of what it's like with today's athlete, because they are in some ways coddled and pampered, and we got websites, and we got rankings, and we got everything's changed a lot since the days when Dean Smith was recruiting players, or any other coach for that matter. And I'm sure you've seen that firsthand too. But it's definitely a different time, and I can't imagine coaching how you've had to shift a little bit because the players that you're getting in had a ranking next to their number, or some of them may not have, and so they got a chip on their shoulder. So how do you volley that as a coach when a kid comes in at various levels? How do you so let's talk about leadership. How do you lead a locker room that could have both extremes? You could have a kid that was highly ranked and highly recruited, and you could have a kid that nobody, like, how do you handle that locker room?
Well, I wish I had a great answer for that, but I think a lot of it for us, and I think it's one of the big misconceptions amongst high school student athletes and their parents, is that number really matters. And
right.
And I'm not here saying that it doesn't, because look, there is something to maybe getting on the radar of some coaches by doing this, but very few. I mean, and then because here's the big misconception, because once you get on a college campus, none of that matters at all. It becomes about production. And so, for us, we don't really even talk about it. I always say, you get a roster spot, a pair of shoes, and a hard time. Like that's what you end up getting from us and that's equal, whether you're the top recruit or whatever profile, or the last recruit on our roster. Like it really doesn't matter. And and just like, the higher levels is a good microcosm for everything. I mean, the 5 stars don't always pan out. I mean, how many 5 stars are playing in the NFL? There's not an insane amount. I mean, there's a lot of Division II, Division III, JUCO guys playing in the NFL. Well, the same thing within our locker room. I mean, the people who shine, I mean, they come from various different backgrounds. So we don't talk about it a whole lot. We talk about leave Letterman's jacket at home, and this all now becomes about what you're doing here. But I'll just wrap up by saying I do think that's a big misconception of a lot of people. Whether it's like in baseball now, it's very metrics driven,
right?
And I encourage that. Like I said, that's a part of this. That's like maybe 10 or 15%. But the problem is when people make it like 90, 95%, and now you have a big gap there. They say, well, his exit velocity is this, but he doesn't hit the baseball, so it doesn't matter. Right? And like I said, I'm really not trying to be meaning to that, because I do think there's a place for those things. I just think it's just one part of the puzzle. So yeah, rankings and all that, it really doesn't matter for us. I mean, we look for good fits. We look for kids that fit into our culture. We look for families who also have the same type of values, knowing that it's not going to be easy. And then from there, we try to treat them all equally unfair.
Yeah. And I think, it might have even been you. Somewhere along the way, somebody told me so many kids on signing day, and signing day is great. Again, as you said, like rankings, all that stuff. And you and I have the same respect for all those services, all those people that make all that happen. That all means something, and signing day means something. It means something to a family to have your kids sit behind the table with the banner out front and the hat, and you're wearing the gear, and it says, baseball mom, baseball day. That all means something. But what so many kids I think forget is that's when the work starts, not when it's over.
Yeah, and
what I mean? That's not the finish line. That's the quarter pole.
They say, like in the NBA, and I almost now, things probably been evolved since your time with us, as now almost when someone commits, I always, and I hate to be the party pooper, but I always tell them that the work is just starting now. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of times I reference the NBA. They say in the NBA, that's like the day someone gets drafted is usually the demise of their career. Like, so that the day they get drafted, they exhale, they've done their part, and then they never fulfill their potential.
Yeah.
And the same thing when we make such a big thing about a signing day or whatever, like it's misguided. Like you said, stop. It's good to stop, reflect, pause, enjoy that moment. And then at some point, and that doesn't have to be like the next hour or the next day, but at some point we have to go back to, okay, now like that part's now beyond us. And high school becomes, how can you help your high school team win?
Yeah.
Right? For us, we call it the winning pathway, but let's go help your high school team win. Go help your summer team win. Come play for us, help us win, get with the summer team. So it's just a process that I think in the process, in that journey is where all the sweet stuff is. That's where the great stuff is.
Yep.
And sometimes we try to attach it to these moments that are really artificial and man-made in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right on all that. And that's where I leaned on you a lot during that process, because I didn't know. We were first time, you know, as our first child, first athlete, all those things. And I'm thankful for your friendship and leadership in those. We had a lot of calls. I remember I called you several times, even in the recruiting. And some of it had a discussion with a place that wasn't even your facility. So, you know, your campus, you were still generous enough and kind enough to say, you know, hey, here's what you should look for. Here's what you should ask. And so I appreciate that about you a lot.
And honestly, AC, that like to do, if you see the State Farm commercials with the Aaron Rodgers discount,
Yeah.
like that wasn't a friend discount. I do that all the time. I always, and I think it turns some people off, because I just say, hey, look, like we want your son to land at the place where he wants to land. So, you know, here's, you know, as you're working through this process, if you have questions, let us know, because there are so many great colleges and universities, and a lot of it's going to come up to that young man and the family to make it work anyways. Like no matter where you go, there's going to be adversity. There's going to be, you know, incredible amounts of competition. So we just want them to land where they belong, you know. So I'm an open book. Like I always say, I'm like the opposite of like the negative recruiting. Like we're like, it's like, oh, you look there, that's great. That school is awesome. They're phenomenal people, you know. So anyways, we really try to take that approach. So you got the Rogers discount, right? from State Farm that doesn't exist.
Well, I didn't realize that, but either way, I'm gracious. I'm thankful. So
yeah, I burst your bubble there. Kidding.
It's all right. It's fine. It's all good. He landed right as you said. It was fit, you know, and not that, you know. Anyway, we could talk all day about his recruiting and where he's at. So, but let's transition, because now you're on to something new, and you've got some new announcements. And at the end, we want to make sure I get all your links, because I want to talk about the book link and your website link. And then speaking of links, let's talk about what you're doing now, because that's really important.
Yeah. So as I was saying earlier, you know, it's just my life, my personal life philosophy is really around growth and continuous improvement. The word Kaizen comes to mind, that I know you've heard me reference before. So I've been down this path of wanting to learn and grow, and I found a community. We started this community called ClearLearn that I became a part of, and I'm doing a leadership course on culture change or personal change, because really the two really go hand in hand for me. So it's a mini course that's available on clearlearn.com, where we're really trying to form just a community of people who are obsessed with development and continuous learning. And I say development, not education, because this space to me is more self-driven. It's more going to be something that the person wants to come and get their hands dirty in their growth. But for us, for my course, there's 6 steps into this culture change or change in general that we try to walk the learner through. And I think this platform is going to grow and grow and grow. Michael Reds does a course on there right now. I think it'll continue to grow as we get more content experts in there. But it's self-directed, and I think it has a chance to really impact a lot of people. It's affordable, and I think there's going to be a lot of upside with this.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm interested, what does that look like? What are my next steps?
As far as getting on?
Yeah. So if I'm interested in this, where do I go? What do I do?
If you go to clearlearn.com, there's I'm the lead face right now on there because the course is out, and you can go on there. You can watch a trailer. You can click for more information. You can talk to the ClearLearn team, or you can email myself and we can talk about it. But really, I think what you're signing up for is that community. I think that's going to be the key. I have a webinar that's going to be on January 6th. That's going to talk more about it as well. So if you need more information, there'll be a webinar. And you know, if you're checking my Twitter or my newsletter, that stuff's all going to be kind of promoted in there. But it's really my obsession, as I was talking about earlier, with watching what great teams do, what great organizations do, and trying to find those characteristics, because I think they're applicable. I think we all can apply and learn. And I think and I keep using the word, but obsession has come from, why are certain teams, you know, you mentioned North Carolina, why are they good year in and year out? Right. I'm less impressed with the spikes. I'm less impressed with the one-hit wonder than I am that someone that stays near the top all the time. And when you think about high performance, I really think about it as the difference between your best and your worst performance are pretty darn close. Yep. Right. Like that's what makes a Major League Baseball player. Like a guy in Double-A can go in the big leagues and have a good game. but it's the day in and day out. And I think the same thing in an organization is how close can you prepare? How close can you come to reaching your ceiling every day? And so like the course kind of, it's around that whole ethos of continual improvement, of trying to look with intention at how you want to grow and develop. And I just see so many people and so many organizations that are at effect, like life just comes at them. And I think it's in our best interest, one, if we're in a position of leadership, to be intentional about creating the culture we want.
Yeah.
And also, AC, and I'm sorry for going on, but I think I'm really passionate about this. I think for college age students or younger people that are going into the workforce, to be intentional about who you're getting aligned with. I think that's often mistaken. I think we get excited about the salary or the office or the prestige of a company, when really the more I do this, I just help get aligned with really good people.
Yeah.
And that's, my last thing is that's my take, but that's because I've done the internal work. Now when you do the internal work, then you say, okay, like this is what I want. And then you start looking for those opportunities. But so many people, I think, just go through life at effect and they're just bouncing around. And so this course and this mission that we're on is really just get people to pause, reflect, work through a process, and see if they can start taking control of the next steps of their life.
And it's awesome. It sounds awesome because I think I agree with you. Everything you just said, I as someone that I think did that early in my career, it's about a salary, it's about a title, it's about the corner office, it's about the new car you want to buy, whatever it is. But I think you got to find out your why. Because if I don't know my why, I am going to take the biggest salary, but I'm going to be miserable because I'm not fulfilling what I am as a person or what my goals were, unless it's the biggest salary. And then congratulations, you got that, but are you happy? And so that's one. And two, I would agree with you in terms of culture. I think, and as you were talking, I was thinking, I think so many cultures, we are reactive and not proactive. In that we haven't done the steps to create a good culture, and all of a sudden our culture is not what we wanted it to be, and we look back and we go, well, we got to get this back. Well, you didn't create it in the beginning, and getting it back, as someone who's talked to teams and talked to companies and worked with teams, I mean, you would say, like, it's really hard if you didn't start the culture the right way, getting it back. And this goes for sports, it goes for companies, it doesn't matter what it is. Once you've lost that culture, or if it's not what you wanted it to be, you almost got to break it down, strip it to the studs, and start all over.
Yeah, and look, I think one thing that I'm proud about, whether it's in writing or this course, like, I took the dirt road, like, and I'm still, my hands are still dirty, like and I don't think any of this is easy, and I'm not sitting here saying that we have, the best call. Like we have flaws. The last year was a really tough year for us, just in general. We didn't get to play much, but just it was a tough year. So like this is all a work in progress. But I think creating the time. I mean, we're just all so busy now. We're all so busy. It's just busy, and we don't take the time to stop and create that vision. And actually, the third step of the process is finding our why. I'm motivated by Simon Sinek and some others, but I think when you have the vision of where you want to go, and hopefully that vision is not just wins and losses or profit margins or whatever. I think a vision stronger whenever you're trying to impact, but having a why really pulls you through those tough, dark times.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that why, it becomes, because I always say that for those of us who are willing to dare to put ourselves out there, to stretch, to try to make a difference, adversity and pitfalls and speed bumps are going to be a part of that journey, and probably more so than anybody else. So if you don't have a why, like, you're not going to make it through. And also, if your why is not compelling, people aren't going to want to follow.
Yeah.
So I think having that why, having a bigger calling, is what's going to impact you. But I really mean it. I think just taking that time and just if I could give any advice, and I hate giving advice, it would be just create that time, create that space to think. Success leaves clues. For me, I always look at sports, but if you just look at the great thinkers, the great business leaders, like, they say that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have a think week every week where they just go shut themselves in a room and consume as much content as they can. Like, if those guys can do it, and I know we can easily dismiss things and say, oh, like, of course, because they're who they are.
Right.
But that's not the case. Like, they're busy,
Right.
But so creating that time to think and reflect and go, okay, like what I get juiced thinking about it myself. Like if I were starting a company, like what would I want that ethos to be? Like what,
Yeah.
like that excites me more than the widgets and the money. Like it's, and once again, that's just me, but you do the internal work. And like you said, if you land on money and profits and winning, cool. But that's up to you. Now you create a system that drives you toward that. But if you never reflect, then I think you're just bouncing around. And I think what you said too about, I think a lot of us fall into the resulting, like, oh, we just worry about the result.
Right.
And if you don't have a process in mind, then you're just at effect once again of wins and losses. So if we win, I'm happy. If we lose, I'm sad.
Yeah.
And we can never really evaluate the process and say, okay, are we getting closer to our goals or not? Because we're just going to react to the wins. And so anyways, there's just so much to it that I think creating that space is everything.
Yeah. And I think anyone listening or watching this can hear, one, hear your passion, two, see your passion if they're watching, but three, also know that we're just scratching the surface. There's so much, and you and I could sit and talk sometime on a park bench in front of a lake, maybe with a fishing rod in our hand, and I don't fish, but I could literally do this all day, because I think there's so much that it is something, and I think that's why I was drawn to your teaching and everything that you know, because I'm a student of that as well. Simon Sinek is just amazing. Inky Johnson. We could go down the list of guys that just inspire, enthuse. They break it down. They make it so simple. And you hear something they say and you like, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense, right?
It's simple, right? It's simple, but there's some beauty in that simplicity. And it's just like, for me, I've always just started watching sports teams, why are those teams so successful? Is it
right?
And I think in general, we lean way more on tactics and skills and intelligence and GPA than we do on trying to create that culture. And I think the more you can lean toward, and maybe run the other direction while everyone else is going toward the skills, and maybe if you can just go, okay, well, wait a minute, what if we just pivoted over here and we try to find right fits for our organization? And that means that we're going to go in a little different direction. We may pass on that person to everybody else, that we may pass on that, Ivy League grad who's, and we may go in this direction, but that person fits within us. But in order to do that, we have to be values-based. We'd have to have done the hard work to know who we are, right? And so you do the self-reflection, which leads to the awareness, which leads to my ability to communicate it and deploy resources to making things happen. So anyways, I could go on and on, but it's just, I just see so many people go in a direction that I don't know if they thought about it, if they would go in that same direction, or if they would pivot and try to find something else.
Well, I think anybody listening, watching knows that we're just getting started, and there's so much here. And so that's why before we get off, I want to make sure I get all your links, because this is the kind of stuff that you provide on a regular basis, whether it's through the newsletter, the new opportunity through this website, your Twitter, even during a baseball game or an NFL game. It's not combative. It's, hey, what did you text me, or what did we were watching some game and somebody didn't call a timeout. It was Carolina. Wasn't it Carolina?
It's Carolina. It was Carolina. There was there was something that I just, right. It's not, once again, when I do that, it's, I obsess about that. Like,
right.
It's Carolina football. It was like, why did they not use a timeout?
Why did they call timeout? Right.
It probably had no bearing on the actual result of the game. Like,
curious.
You're just curious as to why would they not go in that direction in that time.
And that's how we learn. And that's how we learn. So, well, man, you have a million things on your plate. And I know that getting on today and taking your time with me was something that I just genuinely am so thankful for. And I know we're up against a holiday soon, that who knows, when people see this, hear this, it may be after the holiday, but either way. So let me hit you with some rapid fire. Is that good? All right. All right. Favorite coach in any sport?
Ever?
Yes.
The easy answer is John Wooden. I'd say John Wooden. Got to go with the GOAT. Yep.
Okay. Greatest moment as a coach at any level?
It's going to sound crazy because I've been a part of 3 national championships, but I would say winning the conference championship at Denison for the first time in school history, because of the reaction of our alums that had played for us, that said that we did it. When they used the word we, that made me feel so good because, as you mentioned with Austin, we want to be a program and not a team. So that was my kind of a defining moment that we are a program. Even though this team won the championship, all those people in the past, we were standing on those shoulders, and they felt the love and they felt the energy of that championship. So that was probably my proudest moment.
That's awesome. What's the best book you've ever read?
Alchemist, easy. Paulo Coelho. It's my go-to. Probably I read it at least once a year, and now all through highlights. But it's my go-to. It was probably the inspiration for me beginning to write, because in there's a phrase that when we do what we're meant to do, what our calling is, the whole world conspires around us to make us better, and they all pull for us. And I think when you do that, when you put yourself out there, you start attracting the universal forces. And so, yeah, anyways, Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist, is my go-to.
If I would have said top 5, what are the other ones in there? And you don't have to put them in any kind of order. What are some?
Yeah, I would say there's a book called, actually, a new book that I read that cracked the top 5 is Shoe Dog by yes. Phil Knight.
Incredible.
Unbelievable book.
Incredible book.
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is just phenomenal. How a Man Thinketh. And I don't have the author on the top of my head right now as one of my go-tos. And then I'll throw another one in there just because I probably could go in another direction. But a book that greatly impacted me was Bill Walsh, The Score Takes Care of Itself. And I used the word in here earlier about resulting. So like that, Bill's whole philosophy was that if you do all the right things, we took over the 49ers. They weren't very good. They were like 2-11, and 2-11 in his first year, 2-10, whatever the record was. But his whole thing was, let's just keep doing the right things over and over and over again, and eventually we'll get to the results. And they did. So that one always has a special place in my heart because it was something that I used when we were taking over this Denison program.
Have you ever read Quiet Strength?
Yes, Tony Dungy.
Same theme, right? It was just do the right things the right way and all the time. Yep. You know, incredible book. It's probably in my top 5. It's actually number 1 for the longest time, and then it got bumped to number 2. But it's up there. And as you said, it's through highlights. Just amazing book, an amazing individual.
What a person! What a person he is.
I kept reading it and saying, "Is this guy for real?" Like, yeah, come on,
and real. And to answer that, I don't know Tony Dungy in any way, shape, or form, but you start like watching long enough, like he's so consistent the way he writes, the way he speaks, the way he does a broadcast, the way he interacts. Like if he is faking, boy, he's
really good at it. Right?
He does it nonstop. He does it 24 hours a day. So
right. And Shoe Dog, I would tell you, I read that in Cancun on a vacation, and I don't go to Cancun too often, so I don't want anybody listening to think, we do this quite often. It was actually like our 20th anniversary, so we did something kind of out of the box, and we were sitting beside the pool, and I'm reading Shoe Dog, and I'm underlining, highlighting, taking pictures because I couldn't believe that they built a company like Nike before he would mail letters. That's what the biggest thing, my takeaway was, this guy was mailing letters. Now we can shoot a text and be in somebody in seconds, right? We can make business decisions in insta-seconds. And this guy's mailing letters and waiting months to get a response. And he built Nike out of that. Like, that was my biggest takeaway. Thick book. I thought it was going to be completely different. I wasn't prepared for what that book was about. It was amazing.
It got to me late. Like, I just read it in 2020, and I was blown away. Blown away. You get like you can't put the book down type. You hear those things. Like, that was like truly the last book that I can remember where I couldn't put it down. Even the books that I mentioned before, like not that I didn't learn from Shoe Dog. I mean, because I'm the same way. I highlighted a lot, but the story just kind of had me hooked. Like if I read The Alchemist or Viktor Frankl's book, it's more intellectual stimulating, but it makes me reflect. And Shoe Dog, I don't want to say it didn't make me reflect, but it was more just like
different. Yep.
What's going to happen next? You're like hanging on, like, come on. You're like rooting for Nike in a different way. But what a story.
And you know how the story ends.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like, well, I don't know. Did Nike make it? No, I mean, like I'm wearing a logo right now, but at the end of the day, you're still hooked. And it was more a story about Phil Knight, and it was an amazing story about Phil Knight.
Without a doubt, in his complexities, right? Yes. And just, I think also, it's also just a good reminder. Now, this is me just kind of thinking off the top of my head too, just how hard things are. Like we see Nike and think, oh, that's really cool, right? Like that was probably easy. but just from being on the edge of bankruptcy and just, having to find, it was just phenomenal. And I think sometimes we look at people and we go, oh, they have it great. But there is just so much behind, a lot of unpacking that takes behind it. So we see the tip of the iceberg. We don't see all the messiness that's going on underneath a lot of times.
100%. And so, all right, last rapid fire. If you could spend a day with one leader, who would it be? It's a tough question.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it would be like it would be like an MLK. I would go like an MLK's direction. I just marvel at anyone who can live their values the way he did and be unapologetic about it and risk his life and ultimately his life. But just to hear how he had that courage, because to me it starts with courage. When I think of MLK, I think of courage, and then just knowing your values and just living your values. Because he could have took a much easier path. Like he had elevated to a position where he could have probably made some subtle changes and stayed out of controversy. But when you have that belief in your drive, I would love just to sit down with someone like an MLK. That's probably a pretty boring answer.
No, it's a great answer. It's a great answer. Because I think there's a lot of easy answers, right? There's a lot of, whoever it might be, but that's a great answer. And I'm thankful to spend time with a leader like you in this time, even just on a podcast, through all of our interaction. And I want to share one story before we jump off. We did a lot of recruiting visits, not a lot. I mean, it wasn't like we did the 20 campus tour, but, on each one, every campus is different. And I think what impressed me and anyone listening to this, I want you to understand, you put your money where your mouth is. You're not just a coach. The recruiting visit was your typical recruiting visit in some ways, and yet it was very different in that you took the entire team into a room and you went through your 4 pillars of leadership, which I find outstanding and use in my own life since I've learned them from you. Mm-hmm. And, not every team is going to do that. Not every coach is going to do that. Some people, it was just like, hey, we want you, we like you, come play for us. Mm-hmm. Here's our baseball field. No disrespect to the school, but the reality is I wanted to share that because that's a difference with you, is that you are a leader of men, whether it's on the baseball field, whether it's in all the things that we've mentioned. That was what you wanted them to know up front is, hey, if you come for our program, this is where we stand. This is our culture. This is who we are. And like you said, it's not for everybody, but if it is for you, we'd love to have you. And that was impressive to me. And so I wanted people to know that you truly practice what you preach, not just between the white lines, but outside of them. And so give me all the links before we get off of here. What are all the links and ways people can find everything we talked about?
So right now, I think the biggest one is the ClearLearn. So if you just get on the clearlearn.com, just look at the platform. I think it's a neat place to start. I mean, we're just getting started with that project. So I think it's a great place to be someone that's early, that's jumping on with that community. So clearlearn.com, I'm active. I'm relatively active on Twitter. So Coach Deegan, it's at Coach Deegan on Twitter. I'm active on LinkedIn as well with Coach Mike Deegan as well. My newsletter, I'm trying to think the best way. I don't have a sign up form right now over top that I can give it to you. But if you check me out on Twitter, ask a friend. Probably AC can talk. If you listen to this, I'm sure someone can respond. He can put you onto it. But that's probably the best way to stay up with what I'm thinking and have a good conversation. If you reply on that newsletter, I always get back at some point. So those are the big things. My website's coachmikedeegan.com. That's a great place where you can sign up for the newsletter right in front of you. So coachmikedeegan.com, get on there. And then you can also see the archives of all the newsletters that I've written over the last several years.
And all of that will be in this blog post, on the YouTube post, and on the podcast as well. So if you're driving down the road and you heard that, just go to aaronconrad.com, click on this interview, and you'll see all those links there hyperlinked, and you can go to where you need to go to. So Coach, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your leadership. And I mean everything I've said in this. I've learned so much from you, whether it was indirectly or bidirectionally from far away. I'm just thankful for your leadership. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, AC. Feelings mutual. Thank you.
All right, man. Talk to you.
See you.